Another thing investors love to ask startup founders is, can this be $1 billion business? Are there any really good answers you've got to that question?
I think it's a really tough question because if something was very obvious that it's going to be a massive business and market, everybody would already be doing it and there'd be no opportunity for a startup. So definitionally, a startup has to be doing something a little bit non-obvious. And then in hindsight, everybody's like, oh, of course this thing worked, right? And so I think it's really hard to estimate TAM for most things. Or when people estimate it, they use kind of a BS number where they say, oh, commerce is $20 trillion. And if we capture just one sliver. And so I feel like market sizing goes off in both directions. And it's really hard to actually know what the true size of a market is until, you're far enough along that you're seeing real customer adoption and then you can kind of extrapolate. I kind of underestimated some of these things, right? So for example, when I invested in Stripe, I thought it was at the Series A. And I think at the time there were like 8 or 10 people. I thought, oh my God, it'd be an amazing success if they're worth a few $1 billion. Now I think it's going to be a multi-$100 billion company over time. So, it's just really hard to know. And I think part of it was I extrapolated the future growth of the internet, but not enough. So I remember at the time I looked at things that would be comparables. Like there was like authorize.net and there's a couple of other payment services that had sold for somewhere between $500 million and $1 billion each. And then Braintree was up and coming at the time and it was worth a couple $100 million. And so I said, well, internet markets and e-commerce has grown so much since N years ago when authorize.net got started. And so Stripe can be 5 times bigger than that. And therefore that's, 3 to 5 billion or whatever it is. And at the time, if you go back 10 years, which is right around, I think I made the first investment I made in Stripe was like 9 or 10 years ago. At the time, there weren't that many like $5 or $10 billion companies. Right? That was actually a very, very, very rare milestone. And so even imagining something could be 5 billion was a stretch for a lot of things. So, I think people tend to go in both directions, right? You tend to underestimate the true game-changing breakout companies at every stage. And that's why they always look expensive at the time and then cheap in hindsight. And then you tend to overestimate all the other companies in the ecosystem because you apply a view of, hey, this is the next Airbnb or this is the next Stripe to things that just really clearly aren't. And so I think, for example, half of the unicorns, the $1 billion market cap companies are not really worth $1 billion, right? They're probably not going to end up there, but the other half will, and a subset of that will far exceed what people think.